Okay, let's do another video. We're gonna talk about the wound that opens. Every real shaman, and even artists, poets, artists, writers, they have this experience first that makes them redirect their whole energy inward. Something happens, such a disappointment sometimes, or sickness, where you have no choice, and all of your energy starts to flow inward because the outside world holds no meaning to you anymore. Anyway, I'll talk about this a little more in a moment with examples from life. I'll just read you something I posted on Facebook and other platforms yesterday. It's from my book, The Stone in Your Hand. There's a chapter in The Stone in Your Hand called The Wound That Opens. It speaks to the initiation that comes through suffering. The wound that, when carried with awareness, becomes a source of vision and compassion. It becomes more than that, really. It becomes a source of initiation. Every shaman carries a wound that went to the bone, that threatened to destroy them, that left them changed forever. I've written in my book, Where We Dreamed a Single Dream, how the many wounds, the many times I had to walk away, the many times I redirected all my energy inward, and the initiations I had from that, how that changed me forever. The healer is not the one who has avoided suffering. The healer is the one who has been broken open by suffering and has learned to hold the pieces with compassion. Yes. The shaman does not become woundless. The wound remains, but is no longer the whole story. There is room now for other things, for joy, for connection, for language of birds. The wound becomes a kind of vision. You can see suffering in others because you have known it yourself. Exactly. That is very important, especially when you're working with others. You want to help them, you want to free them. You can sit with the dying without flinching because you have already died a little. This is what is meant in mysticism, to die before you die. You can hold space for the broken because you have been broken and have learned slowly how to hold the pieces. You are not broken, you are being open. Chapter 9, the stone in your head, stone in your hand. I'll give you a few examples of what I'm talking about. For instance, Jung, C.G. Jung, when he had that huge breakup with Freud was expecting Jung to carry on his tradition, and Freud's tradition really just spoke about the personal unconscious, and Jung already discovered in his clients that there's something deeper, a collective unconscious, the archetypal, and he broke up with Freud over that. He went his own way, and that was a terrible, for Jung that was a terrible sacrifice. He left the world for nearly 10 years. He just carried on as a doctor, as a psychologist for his clients. But he left the world, his engagement in it. That's when he buried himself in books, in alchemy. He had to find out more. That was his wound there, the breakup. And it redirected his energy inward. That's when he started to have his real experiences, dreams and visions. That's when he started to be creative. Remember the many Jungians that you know this story? He built his own tower. It started off as a tower on the lake and a whole house. He withdrew. It hurt him so much. It changed him so much, the breakup with Freud, that it changed Jung forever, and he had his own psychology, the collective unconscious, and that's what he discovered, and that's what he then later used as a basis to heal his patients, to bring the personal and the collective together, the mythological mind and the personal mind. Yeah, the mythological mind or the collective mind, like I have been saying to you, is the intuitive mind. That's the missing part to the human story, to the humanity's psyche. The intuitive mind and the rational mind. The rational mind is what you have been taught, who you are throughout your life, what you have remembered, your name, your tradition, your address, your profession, your religion. But the collective is different. It has its own story, archetypal. It never changes. The symbols remain the same: gold, water, tree of life, the middle way, the feminine, the deep feminine. They're all there. Yeah, the tree, especially the tree of life. You can see that in many artists and poets, stories and art. Another story that I can share with you is, for instance, of the black elk, the Sioux holy man. He was only 12 years old when he experienced his shamanic sickness. Was it 12 years old or 9 years old? I think he was 9 years old. It was me 12 years old when the feminine first arrived. He was 9 years old, even younger. And his parents thought that he's dying. But he experienced his great vision back then. He went through many different paths in that great vision. But the final part is when he makes it all the way to the peak of the mountain, the sacred mountain, at the top of which he's shown the oneness of all things, of all people. I'm touching the screen because there's an app that wants to close all the time. I'm using an old phone. And he sees the great tree of one mother and one father, the tree of life. And around the tree, there are the many tribes of all the nations, of all the Indian nations in North America. Different hoops, he calls them, as one. And in that moment he knows the oneness of all life. That was his initiation at 9 years old. Many people go through whole life and lifetimes without seeing anything like that. And this boy had it at 9 years old, changed him forever. Then he became the holy man of the Sioux nation. Yeah, I can tell you my own story that changed me forever. I was 12 years old. In deep crisis, you could say. My uncle, my godfather, to whom I was very close, he went missing for 3-4 days. We couldn't find him. We didn't know where he was. During that time, I grieved because I was very close to him. He was like a father to me. A lot more closer than my father. He was actually my father's younger brother. And where he lived with my grandma, that's where was my free space. That was where I was myself, at grandma's. That's where I grew up. And then we moved to the city with my mom and my dad and my sister. But I was 12 years old then when it happened. And I grieved. I remember it was a shock to me that he went missing. I knew something terrible had happened, and he did. He had an accident. He was run over and killed in an instant. But I didn't know that yet. And I had this vision at that time, which changed me forever. I write about it, I think, in both books, Where We Dreamed a Single Dream and in The Stone in Your Hand. This figure comes to my bed, sits next to me. I can feel it. I couldn't turn around. I was so scared. In the middle of the night, I can hear the footsteps on the carpet. I can feel someone sitting next to me on the bed, like putting a hand on me, and I hear it in my own head that no matter what happens, for the rest of your life, you're going to be looked after. You're going to be well. So don't be afraid. This was really the first that I remember contact with the feminine, with the deep feminine, because I knew that the figure that was there, was a woman's figure. Later in my visions and dreams when I was already living in Perth in early 90s. That's exactly who came. She came back. I was again in another crisis. I changed job. I worked hard, went through school, got my qualifications, and I went to work for this in mining, in engineering supply. They were making big hammers and drills for the mining all over the world. And I would work 12 hours every day for 4 days. Then I had 4 days off. It was a huge shock and disappointment to me, more money, but the environment was it was not anything I was used to. And I suffered another huge shock, and that's when she came again next to me. I woke up in the middle of the night, and this time I didn't just hear it, but I saw her floating above my bed, above me, all in white, glowing like the moon. I write about all this. And she said to me, and she gave me instructions for the rest of my life. I write about it in Where We Dream the Single Dream. I've shared this. She gave me instructions for the rest of my life, what I have to do. Simple words. So the initiation at 12 years old, then later when I was 23, 24, huge change. My whole life has become this. Speaking to you through video, through books, through posts, working with people one-on-one. It's, you know, I had to go through complete against the grain of what was expected of me, especially by family. You know, people, parents want the best for you, but you have to follow your own way. Do you know how difficult that is? A shaman has to follow his own way or her own way. Once you initiate it, once you have seen what you have seen, you experience, you cannot unsee it or unexperience it. It's going to stay with you for the rest of your life, and it's going to dictate the rest of your life. So that's just a few examples, Jung and me. How it changed Jung. I mean, he wrote, I don't know how many books he wrote, and then how many letters, and then create his books, the red book, I think the black book, and I don't know how many books there are. Campbell was the same, Joseph Campbell. He was probably heard because his wound was that he started talking about the mythology. He was a teacher, a professor at university for girls. And they always used to give him the smallest room because the staff didn't think that what he was teaching was important. Yeah? And countless books that Campbell wrote. So that was, he started reading. He just started, I don't know what actually happened to him to have turned to mythology that much. I think when he tells the story when he was young, he first came across mythology of the North American Indians. And then one day he just sat and started reading books of mythology. Something must have happened. He doesn't share that with us, what the wound was, but there must have been something that he turned, and it changed him forever. And then he became a teacher, world teacher. Same with the Buddha, young Prince Datta. Wasn't he changed by an experience that he had? That he was so enclosed in the palace, and they were trying to keep him away from the real world. And then one day he sees that there's sickness out there, that people are dying out there, that the world is not what he imagined or what he was told. The life in palace, there's actually something else out there, terrible, suffering. He was changed by that forever, and he left. He left his wife, he left his newborn son. He sneaked out of the palace because he needed to do something about this. That's a shaman thing. And then he suffered so many different, he tried to find what he was looking for through suffering. It didn't work, of course. But that's, you could say, a shamanic sickness. He experienced a shamanic sickness, this huge disappointment in what he was told, that life is not like that. And it shocked him that he went his own way. He had to go his own way and find answers. Yeah, so that's just a few examples. I'm sure there are dozens and dozens and dozens. I've read so many, but I don't, but you get the point, right? Sometimes people get sick, physically sick, and they can't leave bed. They are so bedridden 24/7 that the only options they have is inward. And then something happens. Mystics call it to die before you die. You have an experience of this other, deeper, divine dimension, the collective unconscious. You might journey there with up a mountain, for instance, a holy mountain, or climb up a tree, or perhaps a boat. I shared with you a dream of that journey by a boat to an island where I met the gods, the archetypes. Yeah? The boat was pulled by a figure that walked on water. That's an archetypal experience. So that changes you forever. You cannot unsee it. You cannot unchange. You cannot. Your whole life, your whole family, friends, and things are. When you start to become more spiritual, they're gonna go, "What the hell is going on? What is going on? What? Why are you different?" But you have to. You have to follow your own way. Things are gonna change, and the way, how can I explain it? Things are gonna move. The obstacles are gonna move out of the way. If you do the work, and if you commit yourself to it, obstacles will get out of the way on their own. Like I write in Where We Dream the Single Dream. I don't know how many things happened, how I met these people. Just one thing led to another, to another, to another, and here I am. Over the so many decades. Yeah. Anyway, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. The shamanic sickness. Not the shamanic sickness, but the wound that heals, really. The wound that opens. I would call it the wound that heals. We all carry a wound. And the wound can be a way of healing because it opens you up to something else. Yeah? Like depression. Depression usually asks you to depress yourself. Depressurize what is being put on you by society, by family, by friends, expectations. So, depress all that. That's what depression does. And usually with depression, energy starts to flow inward. All right, that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. And thanks for listening, and I'll see you next one.